She's the head of audit and strategy here at Sentinel Africa. She's also has various certifications. She's an ISMS lead implementer and lead auditor. She's also a BCMS implementer and auditor as well, a certified CDPO, a cybersecurity professional, and also she's ISO 9001 lead auditor certified, a CISA and a FISM. She leads various projects here in Sentinel for our clients across Africa. Our next panelist is Rodney. Rodney is the manager IT audit at Centenary Bank. He has over 6 years experience as a technology and cybersecurity professional. He is also has various certifications. He's an ISC2 subject matter expert. He's also a CISA, has a certification in CISA, CIRISC, cloud practitioner, CompTIA security, among others. He has various degrees and certifications. Our next panelist is Rosalind Muriithi. Rosalind is the Director of Risk Management and Internal Audit at Communication Authority of Kenya, and she's also the second Vice Chair of Institute of Internal Auditors here in Kenya, that is IIA Kenya. She has a Master's of Business Administration from UN and also a Bachelor of Commerce degree. She has different certifications, CPAK, CISA, FISM, and also CQAIP. She's a member of ISPAC and also a member of IIA. She's also a member of ISACA and the Association of Women Accountants of Kenya. And also she's on the Women on Boards Network. So those are our panelists for today. I'll hand over the session to Rodah. He will take us through. So it is going to be a discussion of the various aspects of internal audit. Back to you, Rodah.
Okay, thank you, Candy, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'll just start with a brief introduction. When we started and we were thinking about what to do for the Internal Audit Awareness Month, first of all, the reaction from most of the people we told this to was, is there an Internal Audit Awareness Month? Most people don't even know it exists. And it started in the 1990s by IIA to change the perception that people and the business has on internal auditors. And I guess that perception is something that we are trying to change until 2021. But more than that, it's supposed to drive awareness about the kind of value that the internal audit function can bring to your organization. So it was only natural that, first of all, given the times that we live in, that the only topic we could go for was the future of internal audit. How do we want the future to look like as opposed to what the past has been? And then it was also only natural to have a stakeholder from the IIA talk to us about various aspects of internal audit, and a stakeholder from the banking industry, and someone who is very experienced in the IT audit side of audits to speak with us in terms of how IT audit actually can be incorporated into internal audit, or is incorporated into internal audit. The reason why I say it's natural is because a lot of the things that we do now, everything is increasingly technology driven. Everyone is talking about disruption. Everyone is talking about innovation. Everyone is talking about how can we make bold plays so that our business can grow. Everyone is talking about how innovation can be risky, but it's also very rewarding. And it's not just talking about it. We've seen it happening for many organizations out there. But then what happens is that the riskier your business gets, or whatever venture you as your organization get into, it does not, the role of internal audit cannot cannot be downplayed, and we still need to ask ourselves, how can we pivot and take into consideration all this technology and innovation and risk and innovation, and ensure that our stakeholders, that is our management, our technical level, and our operational teams, feel the impact of the internal audit team, and not as a police officer, but as a partner for assurance and advisory. So that said, I'll go right into it. We'll start with Rosalind. We've been given a brief of her career, but in her own words, since she's here, she can give us a highlight of how she started off and how IIA has changed over time.
Yeah, thank you, Rhonda, for that introduction. My name is CPA Rosalind Muriithi. I currently work as the Director, Risk Management and Internal Audit in the RMIN department. I am the second Vice Chair, Institute of Internal Auditors. And on that note, members, thank you very much for electing me to that office. I started my career as a financial auditor way back in 2000. And that time it was not a requirement actually to have a CPA, to have CISA, to have CIA. And at that point, we were doing financial audits in terms of pre-auditing. And we were actually certifying invoices for payment. That was the role of a key role in internal audit department. So there's no payment that can be made in any government office before internal auditors can certify. And from there, in 2009, March, I remember very well, the government issued a circular on a risk management policy framework. So all public sector entities were supposed to transition from pre-audits to risk management. So that lost many auditors because we did not have training by then. The trainers were actually very few in the country, and we only depended on a few, like government agencies like KSG. For that time, it was KIA for our trainings. And so after 2000 now, most organizations shifted to risk management, which also shifted the mindset of many internal auditors, because currently what is happening, we do not only have financial auditors, we have risk managers, we have energy auditors, we have environmental auditors, and in the IIA profession, actually everyone is an internal auditor. If you look at the people we certify as internal auditors in IIA, we certify all professions. As long as you have a first degree, you are an internal auditor because you are an expert in your field. So even if you are a doctor, you can be a very good auditor for a hospital. If you are certified in information systems, you can be a very good auditor, cutting across actually, because most systems in government nowadays are computerized. You know, the famous IFMIS system. So everyone is shifting towards ICT, and as I said earlier, there is no profession. Even we have governance auditors. These are purely lawyers, people who have a career in ICPSK, and it's a profession of the professionals, simply put. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rosalind. Something interesting you've mentioned is that the Kenyan government shifted towards the risk-based audit in 2009. Something I've learned here, and I'm in Ethiopia right now in Addis Ababa, is that the National Bank of Ethiopia actually just issued a memo the other day instructing internal auditors here to shift towards risk-based audit. So it's interesting also to see how whatever timeline we are working with, the journey we are on is actually the same. So thanks for that. We can go to Rodney for a little bit for you to give us the private sector perspective of it, an overview of your career, and since you're in the IT audit profession, what the relationship between IT audit and internal audit is and means to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rodah. I will not say so much about myself. I mean, the chat that went up already did say that from a career perspective. I started my career about 6 years ago with PwC Uganda, where I was an external auditor at the time. Been there for quite some time, and I was there until September of last year. And then I moved to the bank as an internal auditor. So much of my time has been in the consultancy side of things, as an external auditor. Done some work in Uganda, done some work in Kenya as well. Though been in the bank not for so much time now, and specifically looking at audit, especially from the system side of things, looking at how we can provide assurance from a technological perspective, and also how we can support in terms of the financial angle. And then that's where then we have the relationship between IT, what you call IT audit and internal audit. And ideally, it's one and the same. One is just a subset of the other. Of course, as Rosalind has said, really, auditors can be from a wide array of you say walks of life, a wide area of professions. They can be IT auditors, they can be energy auditors, can be environmental auditors. At the end of the day, IT audit and internal audit. IT audit is just a subset of it. It just feeds into the entire chain. And at the end of the day, what you want to achieve is that strategic alignment, whether it's from an IT perspective, whether it's from a financial side of things. And being that we are having a lot of movement, especially in the technological perspective, we need to be able to provide assurance on the systems that lead us then to want to produce the financial statements, but also the system then that drive the strategy of the organization, which is also very key, especially for us who are in the financial services side of things. We just need to be able to gain assurance over those systems and ensure that whatever IT is doing as a department or as a division then feeds into the overall strategy of the organization. So it's one is just a subset of the other, but at the end of the day, it's one and the same thing. Goals are the same, and what you want to achieve really is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned there that as long as IT audit is aligned with what the business is trying to achieve, then there's supposed to be that correlation. So what would you say are some aspects of the business that if I am an IT auditor, I need to understand about the business to be able to be an impactful IT auditor and speak to my stakeholders' needs?
Okay, what is important idea when you're performing any sort of audit is for you just to have an understanding of the environment. And getting that understanding means you just need to sit down and understand the business process. So what is happening? Look at the business process from end to end. Why do I think there may be loopholes? Why do I think there may be exposures? Why do I think there may be fraud? And that's where then also aspects of things that we call revenue assurance also comes in as part of that assessment. But at the end of the day, what you need to achieve is you need to understand the entire process, and through having a map or a layout of that process, you need to understand where are these particular areas where I think one there may be, whether it is revenue leakage, whether it is income leakage, we think that we may be losing revenue from this perspective. So we need to look at that. We need to look at areas where we feel that there may be a risk of fraud. There's also additional areas that you want to look at and you want to patch in. But also one thing that many actually don't look at is things relating to brand and reputation, very key in terms of how could the brand be negatively impacted in case there was an incident, whether there was a fraud, whether there was a cyber attack. So at the end of the day, all you need to do is you need to understand the business process and walk through that journey from start to end. And for you to be able to create impact, you need to and in any sort of whether it's from an IT perspective, from a financial perspective, even from a procurement perspective, you just need to ensure that whatever you do feeds in back into the strategy of the business. Otherwise, the leadership may not support you. That is one. And then also at the end of the day, what you're doing may not be impactful. You need to be one proud of what you do and know that what you actually do feeds into the overall strategy of the organization. And the basic example I've given for let's say players in the financial services sector, you can employ something. I'll just give a very basic example. For example, if we have a huge number of customers and probably we charge them officiatings for, you call them ledger fees. So just by you looking at that chain, understanding that process, and getting and probably doing some very basic scripting, and being able to pick those customers that are not being charged ledger fees, it's a plus, because at the end of the day, you're looking at things from a technological perspective, but then that feeds into the financial angle, and that is the language that people at the top will understand. So you just need to feed that in and make sure the numbers actually add up.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of people at the top, on that note, Rosalind, you sit on the Women on Boards networks. That was mentioned in your introduction by Candy, and you're currently the IIA Vice Chair of the board, and you are a part of the ISPAC Internal Audit Subcommittee, and a chair of the Audit Committee at Nairobi Water. So the understanding is that you see a lot of these audit reports. You have been part of a lot of these audit reports and so on and so forth. So what is it that you expect at the top management level from from internal audit, whether it is internal audit from a business process perspective or inclusive of IT audit? What is it that you expect in terms of reporting, and especially where you want the internal audit function to show you how they can support business growth in this current environment we're in?
Thank you, Londa, for that question. Actually, in other words, you're asking, why should we have internal auditors? And why should we have internal audit reports? Yeah. Why should we have internal auditors holding a very senior position and there's no value that is derived? Yes. So when I sit in committees, and actually I'm an internal auditor on one side, and on the other side, I'm a chair of an audit committee, I expect to see auditors who really add value to the business or to the organization that they are working in. You're able to justify your existence by the value that you are adding. You cannot stay in a house, for example, that has no water, has no electricity, has no facilities, and you purport to be comfortable. So you move to another house. So for us internal auditors, we need to provide value. We should not only be a problem solver. You know, some organizations, internal auditors view us as a problem solver. If there's somebody that needs to be fixed, you send internal auditors to go and fix. So from being assurance providers, we need to move to be a trusted advisor, somebody who can be able to influence the organization through the strategies that you employ, through the reports that you make, through the recommendations, to help leaders and management to make better decisions based on your reports. So we need auditors also who are very passionate in what they do. We stopped focusing on general items. Now we focus on key matters. We focus on what really matters. Because if you generalize everything, then you'll never get it done. So the beauty with risk management is that you focus on key issues. If I'm sitting in an audit committee, for example, I want to see an audit report that highlights key risks in an organization, or I write key real issues of the business, not just stories and all that. So organizations are looking on internal auditors who really have content that has value proposition and that they actually influence decisions. Like my organization, for example, they do not make decisions unless we table a paper that shows what risks are involved in that process or in that project that they want to undertake. So audit reports really should add value to the organization to help the organizations improve their business and above all achieve their objectives, or rather their mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. So even in terms of reporting, there's something you've mentioned that when we give, when in fact you're meant to advise, so we give recommendations, and a lot of times us as internal audit, we hide behind independence to not give specific recommendations. So specific solutions to specific problems. So now that we are saying that we want to be advisors, there's this expectation from management to be able to say, actually, this is how you can resolve this without actually jeopardizing our independence. So what are your thoughts around the idea that internal auditors should move into more specific recommendations, whether it is technologies or whether it is ways to re-engineer processes or things like that?
Yeah, the internal audit of today is very innovative. We are no longer in transactions, audit, and just beating around the bush. People like reports that highlight key business issues, that highlight improvements, and that add value to the organization. For us to add value and help the organization achieve business, we need to do our work in such expertise that no one will question what we have done. We may not be experts in all areas, for example, technical areas. I'm working in an organization that has both technical and non-technical areas, and the technical areas are real technical. So I cannot purport to be an expert in that business. But what happens is that I'm required now to go an extra mile and do research and provide that assurance that this process, although it is technical, I'm able to advise on to management on the way forward. I may not be required to give a specific recommendation, but the recommendations I'll be able to do, I will have worked with those technical people actually to provide a better answer to solving that problem. So you will not find an internal auditor per se doing internal auditing. You'll find an internal auditor providing assurance, doing consultancy services, doing monitoring and evaluation, doing compliance, governance issues, internal controls. So all of them, imagine they are embraced in one report. So if I come to a technical area that I'm not quite sure of what really happens, I would want to sit down with the technical person, the process owner, we discuss, we see the actions they are actually going to put in place to ensure the issue has been closed. So that recommendation will not necessarily be coming from myself or from internal audit because it's quite technical. But what I'll be asking my auditee or my client for that matter is to put in a mitigation plan or to put in an action plan that will resolve the issue in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. So on that same wavelength of innovation and internal auditors expected to be innovative, Rodney, you work in a bank, and banks have always been pioneers when it comes to technology and how they use it differently. Banks have always found a way to use what people come up with differently. From 1970, when the first ATM was created on the back of a computer, where nobody could have even imagined that such a thing could happen. So right now we are also seeing that there are a lot more technologies that this industry and even other industries are embracing. And it would be good for us to know how we can keep up from an IT audit perspective.
Okay, thank you, Rodah. I've just learned that the first ATM was created in 1970.
Imagine.
I wasn't necessarily aware of that fact. But anyway, thank you for that. In terms of speaking to the question from a technological perspective, yes, of course, being that we're in the financial services sector, it's a very competitive area. It's a very competitive space. So you need to be able to adapt to change. That is one. But you also need to be able to provide what you call value-adding services to your customers. So that's why we have discussions around what you said, ATMs, and we shall have discussions around online banking. We shall have discussions around mobile banking solutions. So quite a number of things and quite a number of technologies that banks need to adopt for them to be able to provide the service. But that was then, yeah. So we are seeing a lot of changes in the space right now. Quite a number of them, and I'll just speak to about 5 or so. Just try to give a very brief overview of some of those technologies that we are seeing are being adopted in the industry. One, we're having discussions around adoption of cloud technology, where ideally you're trying to move what should be a fixed cost in terms of buying server infrastructure, buying hardware, then making it an operating expense where you're paying someone who's giving you those services as and when you need them. If you don't need them, you don't pay for them. So we're seeing a lot of movement in that direction, especially to aspects of cloud computing, but also as financial institutions move in that space, and we also need to be aware of regulations around that as well. You find in some countries that a bank is required to have a data center that is resident in that country, so that data center cannot be in another country. So you need to look at things that speaks the context of what you call cross-border data flows, data flowing from one country to another. That you need to look at that. You need to look at data privacy, look at regulation like the GDPR. Kenya just passed this Data Protection Act as well. So you look at some of those and look at the regulation around that space, because it contains a lot of what you call PII, personal identifiable information. Because now if you look at an act like a regulation like the GDPR, you may think here in Uganda or in Kenya it doesn't necessarily impact you, but as long as you're processing data of Europeans, it still impacts you in one way or the other. So you need to look at regulations around cloud computing as well. Of course, we're also seeing a lot of disruptions that are affecting cloud service providers. If you kept your ears on the ground, I think about a month ago, one of the biggest cloud service providers had their entire data center wiped out by a fire. So then you go ahead and ask yourself, these people who are looking at this cloud service provider as their continuity plan, what are they thinking? Yeah, so I think a lot of movement in terms of cloud computing, but of course, immense risk in there. I'll just not go into them, but just touch on them. Those will be some of them, the very basic ones, but there'll be more technical aspects like key management. Who has the key? For example, if you have a cloud service provider, if you lose your private key, I mean, you're finished, because even the provider does not have that key. Yeah, so those are issues. Also, secondly, we're seeing a lot of movement, especially in terms of what you call RPA, robotic process automation. There are quite a number of things that tasks that you say are repetitive tasks. So there are tasks that will not require humans to do on a daily. Yeah. So we're having bots doing some of that, and actually some of the exception reporting, especially from a risk management and from an audit perspective, you find that some scenarios actually are being picked up by robots that are providing that. For example, even if you look at from the banking side of things, if you look at transactions, online transactions performed, exceptions reporting, those are reports that you get automatically. If you look at some other script that you had spoken about in terms of if I want accounts that have not been charged ledger fees, I can get those reports periodically. So you're also seeing a lot of movement in terms of RPA, but that also affects, from our perspective, affects audit very immensely. One, because we're going to move into a phase where an internal auditor moves into an environment, and so you tell someone, how did you do this process? The person will tell you there's a bot. The person tells you that, how are you going to audit that process? So you need to have an understanding of that entire chain and know there's a lot of movement in RPA. Am I skilled actually to understand what is happening? If someone gave me a flow of a process and told me this process is being carried out by the bot, can I audit that process? Yeah. Also, some of the tasks ideally would be performing actually being performed by bots. Yeah. So there's also a lot of movement, especially in that space. In terms of big data as well, big data, I'll just cover it together with data analytic. So a lot of data generated in the industry all over, and I think what we've heard is that the data that has been generated in the past 10 years is actually greater than the data that has been generated ever since this actual world began. So there's a huge amount of data, and we're seeing people adopting technologies to pick insights out of that data to inform business decision making. So we're also seeing a lot of movement, especially in that space from a big data perspective. Even if it's a hotel, we collect a lot of data from customers. But so how do we tailor, let's say, whether it's promotions or how do we? And the very basic example actually I can give here is if you look at very basic, a supermarket. a supermarket can actually do and perform data analytics, can say, okay, whenever people come to this supermarket and they buy item A, usually on the same receipt, there's item B and there's item C, right? So what the supermarket manager then will say, you know what, these items are, I'll say they're complementary and they're bought together. Let me put them on the same line. It saves a lot of time. Someone walks into a space and just picks items A, B, and C. Yeah, so you grow sales from that perspective. In terms of course, artificial learning and sorry, artificial intelligence and machine learning, quite, you'd say, abstract right now. From our perspective as Africa, we're not. I don't know. We're just not embracing it. But there's a lot of growth in that space as well. So I don't want to speak so much around that, especially for our content. But it's big. It's big. It's a very big area that we need to look at, and it will eventually tie into robotic process automation. And then finally, or before, of course, we're going to look at Internet of Things as well. We're having a lot of devices connected to the internet, whether it's, and for this I'll speak from a general perspective, whether it is medical, whether it is financial, having different sensors speaking information. So that there's also a lot of movement in that direction, especially for players in financial services. Probably one other thing that may have left out is crypto, which is big, which is big. Although of course we are seeing very huge dips. I think for the past, I don't know, month or so, there have been huge dips based on Elon's weird tweets and whatever. That's how volatile the market is, that someone can actually put out a tweet and the entire thing just dies out. So we are seeing crypto, and crypto only does not necessarily mean it's from or blockchain. Doesn't mean it's necessarily from a financial side of things in terms of the money, but you actually do it for transactions, throw all the transactions on the blockchain or on the ledger and be able to verify them. You can have your entire business process designed around crypto, ensure that actually things like alteration don't happen. So a lot of movement in terms of technologies, but where then internal audit fits into the entire picture is, I mean, you just need to have an understanding of the environment. If someone tells you we have this process, we have all our transactions are recorded on a blockchain ledger, how are you going to audit that process? If someone tells you this process is being done by a bot, how are you going to audit that process? Someone tells you our data center is in the cloud, how do you plan to audit that? So we just need to be aware of those technologies and understand how we can come and support business in those areas and provide assurance for them.
Before we also go into the different ways of working and how that has changed internal audit and IT audit, I can just tie together what we have just said. And by the way, fun fact, blockchain is already in use in Kenya and Ethiopia by the Red Cross Society, who are using it to transfer money to the vulnerable persons from the different donor organizations. So this is something that is very real. And then part of my job, I do a lot of strategy, and there is no strategy that I have seen from 2019 that does not include some aspect of cloud, some aspect of RPA, some aspect of IoT, some aspect of big data, and so on and so forth. These are things that people are looking at doing already. Then the key takeaway, if you could take away anything from what Rodney has given us in terms of a comprehensive description of these different technologies, he's mentioned regulation. You need to understand regulation. You need to understand data privacy. You need to understand some of the security controls. You need to understand how does this affect business continuity, and then you need to understand what kind of skills how you can keep up actually is to gain skills in these different technologies so that you are able to interpret them in the context of your business. Great. So if you could just give us an overview of how it would look like, or how remote working is changing IT audit.
Oh yeah, remote working is big. The environment one, the risk landscape has changed, to be honest, because where you sit as an IT audit and you're looking at, like, okay, all my staff are here in the office, they're connected to our internal network. Our network is secure. So, the machines that are here are secure. But now then we're moving into a space where people are sharing homes as offices. Actually, I was reading somewhere, and I think in Germany, one of the organizations, or the country in itself, the parliament of the country has declared that employers actually should start paying employees money, which is ideally rent, because I mean the person's house is now the office, and the office is no longer needed. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of movement again in that direction. But from a risk perspective, the landscape entirely changes, because where we're used to having our machines in a confined space, in a confined office, now we're having people attend, and I'll give a very basic example. People attending meetings on the road. I don't know whether you've seen that. Someone is on the road, they have their headsets plugged in, and they're walking, and they're actually attending a meeting. Very, very big risk in there. We're having movement, especially into mobile devices, look at phones. But also, someone is working from home. They're sharing a space with probably one or two relatives. They move away, they don't lock their machine. Huge risk. There's a lot of confidential data that you may be processing. So that also as well, shared spaces is also from a physical security perspective. You're working from home, you leave your machine there, your kids are playing around, they can actually go ahead and smash the machine. So the risk landscape ideal has changed significantly, being that now the office no longer has borders, and people can attend calls from anywhere. Someone is in a matatu, but they're attending a meeting, and they've put it on loudspeaker, and from their perspective, that is okay. They're actually attending the meeting. Yeah, so that has significantly changed. And as internal audit, of course, we need to be able to understand that and be able to help decision makers protect their assets, their reputation, and also to be able to support what you call operational sustainability, because there's really a very sharp rise in terms of home-based working, and looks like that is no longer the new normal. It looks like now it is the normal. And the bad thing is also that many companies were actually not prepared for this. Many organizations were not. But I can say for certain that I was at PwC, and from about 2018, we had already embraced remote work, already working from home. So when one day out of the blue COVID came, there was no significant shift, because I mean we're already working from home. So, but you find very many organizations are not prepared for that sort of they're not prepared for that sort of environment. They had to create makeshift VPN connections between the office and the home. So a lot of issues there, especially from a data breach perspective, from a privacy perspective, from the number of people who can actually access machines, but also a very big issue from a continuity perspective. You're going to find some organizations where some departments, not by their own making, but just by the nature of what they do, cannot actually work at home. Like someone, by the nature of their job, they actually can't work at home. So those people also exist. But that movement in terms of remote working brings in its own array of risks. And from an internal audit perspective, one, we need to recognize that the changing working patterns and economic relocations have created a huge array of new risks. The very basic one as well, also that we can look at is look at structural changes. We're having people getting laid off. Yeah. So what does that mean? There's going to be a gap in that process. There's going to be a gap in that process. Now, someone who was used to doing one job has to do another. There's a huge risk there from a structural change perspective. Secondly, we need to, as internal audit one, we also need to leverage advanced analytics to ensure that we have more real-time risk identification and timely update of audit scope, because the risks are changing very fast. Because where you have, you perform your risk assessment, you think this is a risk, and then entirely the risk changes. And what actually, as an example here, was when I was still in 2019, before actually COVID, at the tail end of 2019, no, at the tail end of 2020, before COVID actually struck, I was doing an audit for some banks, and I was looking at BCP, and one bank, or the first bank actually, lucky that I did, had They didn't call it a pandemic, call it an epidemic. They had a continuity plan for an epidemic. So I went to other banks and I was telling them, guys, what is your plan in terms of continuity in case there is an epidemic? And they were laughing it off. Long story short, 2-3 months after, we are seeing COVID is becoming a problem. We're actually working from home. So how do we adopt to that? Yeah. So there's that as well. Of course, then finally we need to be able to enhance execution and accelerate our reporting, because there's something we call the cycle time, which is when the audit is actually performed and when the report is shared with senior management. It's a very long time, because you find that middle management may be aware of the issues that you've raised in the audit, and since they have to respond to them, but top management may take about at the bare minimum 8 weeks to know what is actually happening or what happened in that audit. So we just need to enhance, from an internal audit perspective, enhance execution and accelerate reporting to reflect rapid changes in the operating environment. Things are changing pretty fast, and if we don't adopt these new risks that are coming out, we shall not be able to identify them, and we shall not be able to address them. I shall find ourselves in a situation where something happens and everyone will begin asking, where was internal audit? Why didn't they see this? Because the landscape is changing pretty fast, and we just need to run with it. We cannot run as fast, but we need to do what we can do and ensure that we get decision makers to make those decisions early enough before those risks become a very huge problem.
So Rosalind, given these changes in technologies and standards that we've talked about, is there anything we should expect in terms of changes in the IIA standards or any other standards or guidelines that you could suggest for internal auditors here who want to have a structured way of going about the audit activities?
Thank you, Rhonda. You will actually notice that long before even the pandemic, the IIA Global and the ISACA Global, they partnered actually. And IIA Global is able to adopt the standards from ISACA, because ISACA is IT and IIA is for other professions. As I said, internal audit is for all other professions, but ISACA has specialized in IT auditors who are information systems auditors. And so instead of us developing new standards, and the standards are already given by the ISACA Global, IIA partnered so that we can be able to adopt their standards in our audits. IIA Global also allows only members from IIA Global can use its standards, and also ISACA members. All other staff, all other institutes cannot adopt IIA standards unless they are members. There are specific materials that are designed for members, and it's only the members who are allowed to do the standards. So far, we are not revising our standards. We are only doing our practice guidelines so that members now can be directed to adopt the ISACA standards for the information systems audit. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So additionally, you have standards that are specific to some of these cloud technologies. So for example, if you wanted to either implement cloud security controls or audit cloud security controls, you could turn to ISO 27017 for those cloud security measures. There's actually an ISO standard giving you guidelines of how to apply artificial intelligence in your organization. Most of this, which is ISO JTC 42, I think. Then most of these technologies also give you, they present issues in terms of security or data privacy. So there you have ISO 27001 for security and 27701 for privacy. You have a whole host of standards and documentation around that. While we wrap up, we can just quickly look at a question that we received actually when we were, or rather, as people were registering for this webinar, which I think is good, so that we address it before we open the floor for the rest of the question. And I think it speaks to the reason why we are having this webinar. And our participant wanted to know how they can avoid their audit queries. So Rosalind, Rodney, you can chime in. So they're not from internal audit, but they want to know how they can minimize audit queries.
Thank you, Rhonda. I will go first.
Yeah.
If you want to minimize audit queries, you better do a proper risk assessment. Risk management entails identification of risks, assessing those risks, and ranking them, and then prioritizing and knowing which risks are key for your business. And every business is not the same as any other, so don't copy somebody's risk register and go to implement. So from your risk register, pick high risk areas, pick very important issues, and those are the issues that you need to keep auditing once in a while, like twice a year. You need to keep up with the audits and check in the mitigation plan that is being put in place by management or the process owners. Because here, internal auditors provide assurance, but the risk owners are the ones who are charged with the putting in action plans that will minimize the risk. And you will not eliminate the risk entirely, but you can minimize. So if you want to minimize audit queries, and especially from the external auditors, make sure that you are practicing proper risk management, identification of key issues, and focusing on them to resolve them. Otherwise, some issues will be repeating every year, and you might also be looking very busy as an internal auditor working, but you're working on key issues, you're working on low risk issues, and you're spending so much of your time there than focusing on what actually the business requires. So our advise members to focus on key risks and do risk management, ask process owners to put in mitigation, and a bit of innovation also, because sometimes you cannot do business as usual and expect different results. So internal auditors need to step aside, move out, actually work without the box, not work within the box. Go outside and work around the box if that is the issue, so that you provide a way, a solution to your business, so that you may be a trusted advisor. So if you do business as usual, you'll get the same results, and audit queries will definitely repeat. Thank you.
Thank you. Any insights, Rodney?
Not much deviation from what Rosalind said, because I usually tell people from where I see it, audit is a process. It's a process. It's a continuous process. It is a cycle. It's not something that you start and say we are finished. It's a cycle. It's a process. You do it. It's a process of continuous improvement. You may do something this year. Find that there's a query in this space. You get people to resolve it. And then you come back next year, you look at it from a different perspective, you find another issue. So it's a continuous improvement process, and that's where then it becomes key that we need to have we need auditors who can communicate to the auditees that what we are doing is a process improvement. What we are doing is not policing. What we are doing is not reporting anyone. At the end of the day, what audit wants to achieve and what the auditee or the client wants to achieve is the same. If you can't communicate that, we're going to get ourselves in a situation where the client thinks all these auditors do is just to report. We need to be able to communicate to them that what we are doing, what we want to achieve is one and the same, and we need to make sure that reflects in our work, and we need to have those sorts of, and I think one of the things that we need to do as internal auditors is for us to develop what we call soft skills. How do we speak to the auditee? Because if you're going to go to an auditee and you're having this commanding language, show me this, show me this, show me that, show me the other, the person will say, okay, what exactly does this person want to achieve? But if you speak to them in a way where they get to appreciate where you're coming from and what you want to achieve, then you get to be able to drive that sort of discussion. So questions like in terms of audit queries and whatever do not come up, because I've done work for some clients in the past, and they're like, they'll tell you, we last did this in this year. We know we're supposed to do it at the tail end of the year. Do you guys mind coming in between the year? We do a mid-year review, and then when the year ends, you come and do another review. So that's how people should see the process, rather than saying that we're just policing them around. and that we just want to report everyone. So we need to be able to communicate that to the auditee, and that's then where we shall not have questions of query. The queries always be there. It's a process. It's a continuous improvement process.
Yeah, and then to just tie that together, for me as an auditor, I really appreciate when we implement standards. So standards will always mean that you are always marking, you're always doing the same exam, and the marking scheme is going to be the same. So if you are, I don't know who the participant is, but if you are in an IT function, for example, there are standards that are out there that have already identified some of the minimum controls that need to be in place based on your risk. So when you understand your risk, and then you understand or you implement the security controls based on a standard, and your team is also auditing you based on standards that are already established and agreed between yourselves, or an audit criteria to be specific, then it becomes easier for you to even manage your implementation, the implementation of controls. Okay, so last but not least, so that we don't, I know we are a bit over time, but I'd like us to speak to hear from Rodney, just a bit about the continuous rather than periodic audits. I know you touched on it before, but just to bring it home. And then from Rosalind, this issue of the 3 lines of defense model, and how we can see a lot more separation around that, especially for organizations, and it is most organizations these days who have audit and risk functions are sitting together. So we can start with Rosalind, then Rodney. Rosalind?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I'm sitting somewhere outside where the wind is taking away my property. And now, internal auditing is independent assurance, consulting activity designed to add value and improve the processes of an organization. So having mentioned that, internal audit comes as a third line of defense. When no other controls are failed, that's when now the internal audit comes in. And for you to be able to understand internal audit properly, as I said earlier, the functions of internal audit are risk management, but now we have changed to risk assurance. But for organizations that have both internal audit and risk management in the same department, one unit will be doing risk management and the other unit will be doing risk assurance. To some organizations where it has been separated, risk management has moved under the CEO's office under corporate planning. And this now makes risk management a first line of defense. And internal audit with the risk assurance remains that line of defense. So who are in the first line of defense? The first line of defense has operations, people who are process owners, people who are in charge of certain processes and controls. And these are the people responsible for implementing organizations' policies, procedures, systems, and all that. They are the same people who are responsible to put in controls to minimize risks. They are supposed to put in controls to ensure the organization is running efficiently, effectively, and in a very economical manner. So those are 2 different lines. Now we come to the second line of defense, which has management controls. This is where the supervisors are. This is where the CEO is. This is where senior management are sitting. And these are people who continuously review those controls to ensure that they are tightening, to ensure that they're effective, to ensure that they are economical. So they're in charge of approvals, they are in charge of authorizations, and they're in charge of running the organization. So the third line of defense, which has independent assurance, has also external auditors therein, and people who provide oversight, people who are not directly involved in running the organization on a day-to-day activities. So those are the differences of the 3-line defense. I've forgotten what else you had asked about after the lines of defense.
In
Just,
fact, the question can just simply be said, there's someone who has a problem here for how they can communicate to their management that they are actually the third line of defense and not other things.
Yeah, actually, when you come to internal audit, the internal audit charter clearly identifies the roles, identifies what internal auditors are supposed to do, what internal auditors are required to be accountable for. And internal auditors, especially in the public sector, we have a PFM regulation that clearly states that they are independent of operations. You know, sometimes when we are refusing work, we tell management that I'm independent. But you see now there's another kind of assurance and also consulting, which you can assist the management. So for internal auditors who want to practice as an advisor, you can still do that within internal audit, but let management know that you are clearly an advisor in an advisory role or a consultant role, not as an internal auditor. And sometimes we tell internal auditors not to do forensic auditing, because the moment you carry out a forensic audit, the next moment you are auditing, people will not differentiate between you and a policeman. They'll still think you are the same forensic auditor. Sometimes it's good to outsource forensic audit or co-source. Let's do it with other partners who are even more experts in that area. And you concentrate on internal auditing, that is reviewing controls and providing assurance to the board. When management wants you to be involved, please let it be very clear. Sometimes we are involved in management meetings, but make sure you are recorded as in attendance, not as a member. All the meetings in the organization, if you're an internal auditor, please attend in attendance. Don't sign in as a member of that board, that management committee. And so for internal audit now, you minimize a lot of your queries because now you'll be an advisor and you are recorded as in attendance. So there's no time management or collectively pick you as a member of management. But in addition, you can also do some trainings like what we are doing. You expose your management and your board so that they will understand. That's why you have a charter that defines your roles, responsibilities, and your activities. Let them be trained. Let them know exactly what you are required to do, either under the Act or under the internal audit charter. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So that we don't lose what you've said, if you have that audit and risk function performing together, you can change the reporting lines. Internal audit can sit as an advisor in your management meetings and play that advisory role as long as you're not recorded as part of management or in attendance in that management meeting, and that will even help you reduce audit queries because then you are advising as things happen. So thank you so much, Rosalind, for that clarification. So Rodney, you can close us off with the difference between or rather the shift from periodic audits to continuous audits.
Okay, so maybe before just I jump onto that, yeah, just to add on to what you've shared with Rosalind, I think again from our perspective as the bank, those two divisions are completely separated. We have a separate risk management division that has its own management. So they cover they cover that line of it, and then we also have audit that is also completely separate and independent from risk as well. And then we also have a compliance division that also has its own team, its own management team, totally separated as well. So we sort of have that infrastructure. But again, also you say not all organizations will have that. Just depends on the nature of what we do. What we do is high risk. We not have someone performing risk, performing compliance, and doing audit as well. We just need to have that sort of separation. But it entirely just comes down to what your risk appetite is, but also what you're doing as an organization. That will determine that. In terms of continuous auditing and continuous monitoring, it is very key, and especially in the time that you're working with now, we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where, as internal audit, you're going to move into an environment and then you're going to, let's say, now I'll give an example from our perspective as a financial institution. We have quite a number of branches spread across the country, over 70 branches. So you find that just by the nature of that, we cannot perform audits on all those branches in 1 year. Now you find that the audit has to be spread. So you find that some banks that you do, you have an assessment and say, we think that this branch is high risk, so it should be audited annually. We think this branch is low risk, so we can do 1 year and then skip off the other year and do the next year. So the problem with that is that you find yourself in a situation where everyone says, oh, the auditors are coming, so let's get our act together. So they have their act together. So by the time you get into the environment, some of the things, well, you may pick out some deficiencies, but some of them may have been covered just because they were aware that the auditors are coming this year. So they will cover that specific section of it. So you find that a lot of things are hidden in that perspective. It is because it is periodic, and people understand when you be coming in. But then when you move to what you call a continuous auditing and continuous monitoring process, you're going to be able to identify key risks as and when they crystallize in the environment without having, say, after 1 year. You're going to identify things as and when they are, in case the instance of fraud, you identify them. And the beauty with actual continuous monitoring is that there's a possibility that you're going to identify things before they actually happen. For example, if I'm doing my continuous auditing and I have probably, let's say, one thing that we're working on right now is we have something called an internal audit dashboard. What an internal audit dashboard will have is that we have key risks. Let's say we have key 10 risks. So we are pulling that data on, you say, after 3 days, we're pulling that data from all the various sources, bring it into one data house, and we're having dashboards that are being splashed on big screens all over the office. So you find someone walks into audit and just looks at the screen and says, okay, we think there's a problem here, we think there's a problem here, we think there's a problem here. Can we send a team to check this out? Yeah. So we're having key risk indicators that are being presented, and they're being presented in real time. So we determine, actually, we look at things and be able to identify them. A very basic example would be we do issue out loans, but we have situations where for some reason you find that if someone approves the loan and he's the same person who disburses the loan. So that is an irregularity. That should not happen. So when certain incidents happens, that has to be flagged immediately. We have to see that immediately, flashes immediately on the screen, and there has been a loan in this particular area, and this loan again has been approved by this person, by the same person. So some of those things, the key risk identifiers, should be able to flash on the screen and be able to address them. So that's the difference. That's the difference. Ideally, it involves a lot of technologies. It involves running some systems. It involves actual education, because many people, I don't know, the family organization don't actually have a learning and development arm in the organization, but that is very key. We need to be able to upskill our staff in, let's say, newer technologies, because if you look at a thing like continuous audit, you need someone who has some knowledge of data analytics, you need someone who has some knowledge of robotic process automation, you need someone who has an understanding of visualization. Yeah. So it's a wide array of skills, and getting those skills comes with time. So you need to be able to, let's say, you need to be able to, as an organization, to strictly say we are investing this much in education. We need our people to be able to do this. So that's just the beauty with continuous auditing. Identify things before they happen, and even if they've happened, yeah, the impact can be lessened because you've identified the issue and you've addressed it before actually there was more harm. So that's the difference. Rather than waiting for a year and people are ready, auditors are coming, let's get our stuff together. Yeah, so that's the huge difference. We're seeing a lot of movement in that direction, and especially during this COVID time, new risks are coming every now and then. So you need to be able to identify those new risks very, very fast, and need to be able to address them, because people are getting wiser and technology is getting better at processing things.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. So that's it for what we wanted to talk to you about. So I hope we have a great understanding of what the future looks like for internal audit. And you've heard it from people who are very accomplished in their field in their lines of work. So thank you so much, Rosalind, and thank you so much, Rodney, for making time to even join us and speak with us about this issue. So I hope we picked that internal auditors need to now understand how to position themselves for strategic alignment and to be able to make an impactful difference, and what that looks like, some of the standards that we'll need to be aware of, some of the fact that we need to be in touch with our business processes and our business operations in order to even survive in the future, because a lot of those processes are being digitized. Some of the technologies that are out there that are going to change how we audit and what we audit. And from the audit operations perspective, the fact that now it's no longer enough for audit automation, but now we need to look at audit analytics for that continuous auditing. And lastly, the skills that we need to get. If anything, you can go and look at Rosalind's profile and Rodney's profile, just so that you can see some of the skills that are required for us to be able to be impactful internal auditors. And with that, happy Internal Audit Awareness Month.
Thank you so much, Rodah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So if there are any questions, because we have burst the dam in terms of time, I think we can have time for one, and then you can always reach out to us. Myself, you can reach out to Rodney, you can reach out to Rosalind, you can reach out to Sentinel directly if you have any questions or clarifications or comments, or you want to further this discussion. You can also follow each of us on LinkedIn to communicate with us directly, and we hope you join us again. I'll just give a minute for anyone who wants to type a question in the chat.
I can't see any, Rhonda, but for the moment, maybe I can make a comment on especially internal auditors and working from home. For majority of us, it has been quite a challenge working from home, especially if you have the manual systems and your audit department was not yet automated.
Yeah.
It's quite a challenge, but that should not be the end. With precautions, we can still prioritize our key audits. We can rearrange our annual audit plan. We can actually rearrange in such a way that we start with items that matter most by checking whether in the first place the organization has business continuity plans in place to inform those critical activities that must be performed. And during this pandemic, it's not possible to accomplish your entire audit plan, but you can actually prioritize and do key audits based on high risk areas. You can also leverage on technology for those who have technology, and especially the data and data analytics modules and all that, to be able to achieve your objectives in a faster manner. And we can also outsource and co-source. So as much as you are unable to accomplish your program because of the interruptions, the remaining part actually you can outsource so that you're able to achieve your objectives. So the challenges are there, they will not go away in a hurry. And so we have to live with it. And maybe possibly for those who can, you move towards audit automation. That will really help so that you can also work from home and you work online and also on site. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. Alrighty, thank you, and thank you all. Have a good weekend. Oh no, good start to your week. And it's 2013 here, so forgive that I'm behind time. Okay. They're all free to drop off as we require.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.